It's a funny old world we live in, isn't it? A world of personal likes and dislikes, of loves and hates. I reckon, you know, a sharp suit with a 4-button cuff is something that should be aspired to. Whereas if you ever catch me reading Hello, you know it's time to get the men in the white suits. However, there is one thing about which there is no such controversy. A thing that inspires affection, admiration, and dare I say it, love, wherever it goes. I'm talking, as if you didn't know, about the V8. Never in the history of engineering has a petrol engine been so perfect and yet so politically incorrect. It's big, powerful, lazy, horribly uneconomical, and yet one thrum of the exhaust can wring a smile out of even the staunchest environmentalist. To quote an engineering phrase, the V8 is the absolute business. Driving a car with a big, fruity V8 is an experience that should not be missed by anyone, really. Just to know how perfect driving can be. But when the V8 was created back in 1915, it wasn't designed for the B-roads of Britain. It was built for a much grander landscape where people talk in loud voices, wear tartan shirts and sing country songs. And of course, I'm talking about Belgium. The British very much favoured a 4-cylinder engine. The Germans built a lot of very natty 6-cylinder engines. However, the V8 engine was very much an American idea. Of course, other people built V8 engines, but what makes it uniquely American is that America is the only place where you could get what is basically a Ford Granada off the production line with a V8 fitted. Although, it didn't do their beer any good, did it? The V8 is as much an American tradition as enjoying a tin of beer on your porch, albeit a rather watery tin of beer. That's where it was born and raised, and that's where it is most at home. You never find a scone in this country. Do you see anything in a tea shop? I'm dying of thirst. We all know what it's like to drive in a small car at speed for any kind of distance. It's absolutely ghastly. But what if your Auntie Mary lives 2,000 miles away? Then it's just positively unbearable. Allow me to show you why. Ah! The problem's not just with the size of the engine, but with the way the pistons and cylinders are laid out. Okay, pay attention. Here's one I had prepared earlier. Johnny air intake. Johnny camshaft box cover. And here we are. Sandra cylinder head. And there you have it. The source of all the trouble. There's your pistons. 1, 2, 3, 4. They shoot up and down in there. Little explosion happens above them and shoots them down. Then they shoot back up again. It's very, very clever, but it does produce a lot of vibration. It has to, even if they're balanced. There's a lot of up and down energy. Energy that goes up and down and up and down and up and down. And this is the problem with a little up and down engine, or even a big up and down engine. Eau de Castrol, it is very much you this year, I think you'll find. If you want to get rid of the vibration, you're going to have to get the pistons to do something else. Ding dong. And the car manufacturer that came up with the solution has been synonymous with luxury ever since. Oh, hello. Back in the early 1900s, Cadillac were producing relatively small cars, but they were particularly interested in the luxury end of the market. And while other manufacturers were extolling the virtues of soft springing, etc., Cadillac realized that real smoothness and real luxury had to start under the bonnet. And so, in 1914, a Scottish engineer at Cadillac called McCall White set out to design a V8 engine.
Hello.
Hi, I need 4 mini rolls, and I need a stack of those wee chocolate sticks, and a large coffee, please, with everything in it, milk and sugar.
Okay, that sounds like a very strange order. We haven't had one of those for a while.
I'm a very strange person. You may have one of these at home. Let's say this is your ordinary engine, where the big ends of endless 56's jokes lurk, which has got 4 cylinders, and therefore 4 pistons in line. So called, somewhat predictably, because they're in a line, which is why little engines, little 4 cylinders, are usually very rumbly. However, the clever boys at Cadillac came up with another idea, which was, let's have 8 pistons, 8 cylinders, and lay them out like this. And this is much more like what a V8 looks like. It forms a V. It's all really about balance. The 2 banks of pistons balance each other going up and down, but also side to side. That's why this engine goes zing, zing, and this engine goes big difference. And so at a stroke, or rather 8 strokes, the V8 engine put Cadillac firmly in the luxury car bracket. All right for some, but not so for the ordinary Joe with the Ford, which is where the V8 story really begins. It'll be fine now. During the Great Depression in the 30s, things were pretty bleak for the American automobile industry. No manufacturer could afford to design fancy new body styles, and the public were far too wary to spend money on such frivolities anyway. So good old Henry Ford focused his attention on building what he knew would represent true value for money in a car, an affordable cast-iron V8 engine, the Ford Flathead. And this is what they came up with. Well, not this precise engine, of course. Now here you are, this is your flathead. The head, of course, is just the top of the engine. It's the bit that stops the pistons from flying out the top. Sure I do like. The pistons are laid out in a V. You can almost see it there. Up there and up there. In any other country, you'd have to pay an awful lot of money for this. You'd have to be very rich. Oh, yeah. But I mean, that was Henry Ford's genius, really, was making good, reliable engineering affordable to everybody. The Edinburgh socket set. It may not look like much, but this lump of iron was to change motoring history. Here we go. Come on. Oh, yeah, beauty. This is the 1932 Ford Roadster. Aimed at the younger market, slightly sporty, but still a cheap and cheerful little car. But for the first time, they put a brand spanking new engine in it. And believe me, no Ford Fiesta ever sounded like this. In its day, it was one of the least expensive cars you could buy. 860 bucks, but for an extra 50 bucks, you could have what this has got, which is a V8. Now, there'd been V8s before, but always in cars like Cadillacs, really expensive Cadillacs. But this was the first time they ever put a really smooth, complicated, utterly reliable, powerful engine in a bog standard car. Needless to say, of course, these sold like hot tamales. Ford's new V8 wasn't just smoother than the old 4. Because it had twice the number of cylinders, the engine is only working half as hard, making it much less stressed and therefore less likely to break down. And there was another feature of the engine that was immediately apparent. It was fast. with this much smoothness and power, it was absolutely inevitable that it would be very attractive to the criminal classes. And Bonnie and Clyde had one of these, and so did John Dillinger, public enemy #1. John Dillinger actually had the brass neck to write to Henry Ford and congratulate him on his engine. And I can see why. In fact, I'm in half a man to go and rob a bank myself. Ford's little V8 captured the imagination of America. It allowed people to travel in comfort and style, no matter what their position in life. But unwittingly, it also spawned a whole new motoring culture, hot rodding.
This car is a good example of what you do to a flathead motor. One of the first things that they learned was to put 1 or 2 more carburetors on, which gets a lot more fuel in. They started to manufacture heads with fins for cooling, but then they found that the exhaust would back up some, so they designed these good headers that you see here. And it evolved into quite a powerful engine. That venerable little V8 has kicked out a lot of power and still does.
And with that extra horsepower under the bonnet, lowered suspension and plenty of chrome, it became the engine of choice for the young American male. It was less than a decade old, and already the V8 was a cultural icon. Now that's what I call an engine. If you wanted to go fast in Britain, across the Atlantic there, which conveniently is behind me, you would have maybe an Austin 12, an Austin 10. Unless you had enough cash to go out and buy yourself a Lagonda or a Bentley or a Fraser Nash or something, you were stuck with going up and down the A35 at 40 miles an hour flat out. But here, it was a different story. It takes a lot of cleaning though. It's a nightmare. In the 50s, the government-funded freeway system started to spread across the United States, allowing motorists to travel for vast distances at high speeds. The system could have been designed with the V8 in mind. However, now people's needs changed from cast-iron reliability to something slightly more flashy. And it was here that Ford's big rival entered the story. This is a 1955 Chevrolet. This was a car that America very much took to their hearts. They bought 1 million of them in the first year alone, since which time they have produced 65 million small block Chevy engines. The Chevy small block V8 engine was so popular it outsold the VW Beetle car 3 times over. It still had all the smoothness of the old Ford flathead, but with advances in engineering such as overhead valves, it was smaller, lighter, and much more powerful. And in a country that was developing rapidly, that power was to find its way into all sorts of messy situations.
Chainsaw.
When the settlers came here, they cleared all the land with a couple of mules and ropes. It's much the same now, but the mules sound slightly different. All right, Steve? The Chevy V8 wasn't just good for pulling chicks. With the right tires and tow bar, the engine became standard issue for would-be pioneers all over the States. And there was another side to the old V8 that the Americans were to latch onto with even greater enthusiasm. With a few bits bolted on, it could turn into a very different beast altogether. Whoa. Lordy, lordy. That is fantastic.
This is your small block. Hasn't changed a whole lot in the last 50 years. It's pretty basic the way that it came out of the factory. We got 500 horsepower here, 486 pounds of torque.
Do you think I could hear the engine without my helmet on, just to hear what it sounds like?
Yeah, you sure can. Let's start it up.
All right.
All right, put your clutch in, into first gear. There you go, perfect. All right, go ahead and step into high gear. Okay. Get a higher on the back. Lift. Easy on the brake, coming down in.
This is stock car racing, and it's the nearest I've ever been to being stuck in a multi-story car park with the accelerator jammed full on. It couldn't be further from the high-tech of Formula One. It's cheap, cheerful, loud and smelly, and that's just my jacket.
Back on the drum. Left. Apply the brake. Don't go down solo. Robbie, I'm going to get the fan out. Great job, Robbie. Great job. Okay, keep it in the groove so we don't pick up any stress on our tires. Use your brake to stop. Don't hit anybody. Good job.
Oh, boy.
Everybody that's a big race fan, it's Ford versus Chevy, but it's the V8. That's the power that drives it, and that's the thing that all the fans get so emotional about is it's the V8 engine. It's American way of life.
The M25 went completely mad.
Stock car racing started in the US during Prohibition, when bootleg whiskey runners would practice getting away from the police. Not much has changed, except now it's the cars that run on alcohol. With races lasting up to 3 hours at speeds of 160 miles an hour, it's as much about endurance as outright speed. But with their simple design and bulletproof construction, those big V8s weren't made for it.
Every single one's got the same engine, and that's not because of any standardization. It's because that's the best motor for the job. I better go and get myself an unattractive nylon baseball cap or I'll feel completely left out.
I want you to have a look around in here, Robbie. You like engines? You like
By the late 50s, the V8 was everywhere. With fuel prices at an all-time low, the engine went from strength to strength. Americans relied on the shape, sound and simplicity of the V8, and when their constitution was threatened, they knew where to turn. During the Cold War, Florida built a number of sirens on the roofs of tall buildings to warn the public when the communist missiles were coming. And what reliable, dependable, all-American device would they use to power these sirens?
1952, 180 horsepower Chrysler Hemi engine. So they built these devices to place on the buildings. This thing turns. It's on a turntable. Look at this.
Yeah.
And as the engine runs through this intricate pulleys and system, it turns it on this turntable, and this siren will shoot this sound out the back of it through the horns. It goes about 25 miles.
Jesus.
And this was to warn people that there was an impending nuclear attack and to take cover. And this particular one runs on propane gas bottle here.
Yum, yum.
I tell you what, I think we can't do it on propane gas. That's too complicated. But you know, we might hook this thing up with a gasoline carburetor.
Yeah.
And put a bucket of gas down there and some batteries and some wires and see what we could do with it.
Well, let's do it.
Okay.
It's a testament to how well built this engine is that we could even attempt this. The engine had been sitting on a roof, unused for 10 years, covered in salt spray, and then lay at the back of a garage for another 10. Add to that the fact that it's never run in gasoline. Let's just say I wouldn't try it with a two-stroke.
Set this battery right in here. Won't be in the way of anything.
So you reckon most of this, the high tension circuit's probably all right still, isn't it?
Looks healthy.
Yeah. Pull that dipstick out and see what that
You
looks
got a rack
like.
somewhere?
Let's just give it a little drink right here. Okay.
A teaspoonful.
Turn it over and I'll flip on the ignition
crank it,
as
you
it's
put the
turning
power
over.
on. Okay.
Contact.
Fantastic kick over for an engine that's not run for so long, isn't it?
In the 1970s, everything began to go horribly wrong for the American V8. Everything that stood for a big understressed engine, a gas guzzler, a smooth engine, became hideously unfashionable. First of all, in California, they introduced strict emission controls on all engines. Then in '74, the price of raw crude quadrupled overnight. And then thirdly, the government introduced a tax on all engines that couldn't do 20 miles to the gallon or more. It was a nightmare. So, what did Detroit do in their wisdom? Well, they built this. The 1972 Cadillac Eldorado. 500 cubic inches, that's 8.2 litres. Enough displacement for 9 Morris Minors. It was the politics of, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. There's no doubt that the V8 became an American icon because it suits their roads, their character, their way of life, and their fuel prices. It's difficult to argue for an engine that does 8 miles to the gallon in the UK or anywhere. But there is something else that the V8 represents that is unique to the American way of life. It is the certainty that if something is good, then it should be available to everyone, whether you're a lawyer or a linesman. And if that sounds like commie talk, then it's worth remembering that Che Guevara drove a Chevy. V8, of course. Come with me, why don't you? Another big, oversized, guzzly V8, complete with 8-track. Foxy Lady by Cher, check that out. There's the Volkswagen Beetle. A straight 6, good heavens. How did that get in here? Quite satisfying to see a Japanese car here, actually. Although I wouldn't be seen dead in one. If you see me in a Nissan, you know I'm dead. See this wee thing? Well, that's handy. Look, there, you a fiberglass Cadillac. It's a frightening idea, really, isn't it? There's the old Camaro. That was always the white trash sports car. It's the equivalent of the Capri in Britain, you know. You get issued with a medallion when you buy it and an identity bracelet in case you forget who you are. This must have had a shunt. He probably got blinded by his medallion and hit a lamppost. So that's what beer tastes like. Gosh, it is very nice. I can see why they drink so much of it.